The Sega CD expansion to the Mega Drive released in 1991, 3 whole years after the PC Engine released its similar CD attachment. Like the system before it, the Sega CD boosted the Mega Drive specs to make it more powerful. It could play full motion videos, CD soundtracks, and more. But the thing is, the CD unit is still limited by what the Mega Drive itself could do to some extent. For example, it's still limited to a maximum of 61 colors on screen at a time, which the Super Nintendo far surpassed, being able to output 256 colors at a time. It could only push the console's hardware so far. A lot of games just felt like slightly upgraded 16-bit titles. That being said, I love this thing. It has some amazing ports and unique games for it. Sonic CD is still my all-time favorite 2D Sonic game, but when it comes to games that really push the system, none have impressed me more than Soulstar. The developers are Core Design, a studio founded in Derby, England in 1988. The team was formed by developers who had previous experience with various studios. They came together to form their own. They started with a focus on Amiga home computer systems, trying their hand at games of various genres and even making a Monty Python game. From here they would also make games like Wonder Dog and Chuck Rock, but there are 3 games we are focusing on today that really push the CD hardware, starting with Thunderhawk, also known as AH3 Thunderstrike. This is a Sega CD port of the game, which was originally released on home computers. It's a seriously impressive title, released in 1993. You play as a helicopter, taking down enemy units over land and sea. The game does an amazing job making the world feel 3-dimensional. Of course, a good chunk of the screen is taken up by the cockpit, which was a common way to save on resources in this era. This game looks great, it sounds great too, and it plays very smooth. That being said, it's really hard to know where you're being attacked from, and I often find myself getting disoriented. I think it's hard for me to appreciate the game today without having been there when it was released. I can't imagine how cool it was at the time. It's pretty satisfying to lock onto targets and fire missiles, but it's not something that holds my attention for too long. The next game was Battlecorps, released in August 1994. We get this opening cutscene explaining that a machine entity is infecting robots with a cyber psycho virus, making them go amok. We have to go there and take them out. It's such a 90s plot and I love it. The voice acting is so goofy.
Okay, sweet meat. Let's get down to business. You got 12, count them, 12 sectors to blast through before you make that date with Moses.
We choose between 3 characters, all of which get this funny dialogue explaining who they are. Becky Ojo, Jack Cutter, and the only non-human Dika A. Jang. You gotta love those names. I went with Becky. We land on the planet in our bipedal mech and begin our long battle against the infected machine army. You tap forward to move, each press will make you go faster. To stop, you can press A or tap back until you reach this neutral point on the dashboard. It takes a moment to get used to, but I kinda love the ability to just crank up the speed and let my mech walk on its own while I focus on turning and shooting. It feels like a good substitute for the lack of analog controls. You've got a plethora of weapons, bombs, blasters, guns, etc. All the weapons that aren't your default will have a limited amount of ammo. You get directions from this little cursor that moves around your crosshairs. I really enjoy the soundtrack. It's a lot more chill than what I was expecting, but it's cool. I will say though, just like the last title, it's so hard to know where you're getting shot from. Dodging is basically impossible. You're massive and you don't have any quick way to evade. Every enemy encounter is just a game of who shoots first, and you'll always take damage. I felt like every level was an endurance test, and I found the game to be really difficult and struggled to get far in it. Still, I respect what they were going for. The world feels and looks cool, and it has that goofy, cheesy, try-hard cool vibe that was so common at the time. I really just wish that they got the ability to redesign the game. If I could do a quick dodge to the side or something, just find some way to add in a bit more mobility, I think it would have helped a lot. But the game I wanted to focus on the most, released just a month later, Soulstar. Booting up the game gives us an opening pre-rendered cutscene with ships invading a planet, bombing cities. We play as Breek Hamelt, a member of a warrior race who has lived for thousands of years. He has to stop the ancient alien microids from stealing the energy of the Soulstar. Apparently he's been fighting them for most of his life, and this time he intends to finish the battle. We get a short cutscene giving us a mission briefing, and then we're off to blast our way through enemy lines. And right away I just found the visuals to be jaw-dropping. Just look at the way the ship moves, all the angles it renders so beautifully, while keeping the game feeling perfectly smooth. It really feels like a 3-dimensional object, but I know it isn't. It's such a nice effect. I can't imagine how much work work it was to pull off just a player's ship. But these lunatics went even further, giving you multiple ships and walkers to move around, which all look and feel super smooth. It's just so impressive. Soulstar feels very similar to Star Fox with its on-rail segments. You can move and shoot freely around the screen, select different weapons, some of which have limited ammo. The way they scale objects is just wildly cool. Like this part where you fly into an enemy ship. I was playing this while streaming it to friends, and we were just going crazy seeing what the game would pull off next. And these boss sections that allow you to fly around freely, so you can really see how impressive the environments are. I gotta say, one of my favorite shots in this game is when you're on this watery planet and a giant alien tractor beam is firing off in the distance. It just looks so cool and imposing. Later on you get to see it from underwater too as you fight to stop it at its source. The water effect added looks so amazing. I'm surprised even the ship itself has it applied to it. I don't know how they did this, but it's so cool. The variety of locations is seriously impressive. Fields, cities, tunnels, deserts, and more. You also get this mech which can hover around. Watching it walk about and turn its turrets to fire at enemies is so sick. The music goes for a very cinematic tone, and it fits perfectly. They really wanted to make it feel grand, which is very fitting considering how much this pushes the hardware. It's just a seriously cool game. Being able to fly towards a planet, seeing the details of it fade into view and then shoot an opening for yourself, flying into a tunnel, I mean, it's so cool. They find such creative ways of showing depth in a game that's still very much two-dimensional. Considering the limited colors that can be on screen at a time, I'm so impressed with what they managed to do. I will say I recommend a guide for this game since there are some bosses that aren't as simple as dodge and hit the weak spots. Sometimes you have to do a bit more, and it's got its fair share of difficulty spikes. It honestly can be pretty frustrating at times, but still I think it's worth a try. There was supposedly a 32X version in the works titled Soulstar X, but it was cancelled. I wish we could have seen what an upgraded version would have looked like, but what can you do? And just 2 years after this banger came out, they went on to make one of the most beloved game franchises to this day, Tomb Raider. They were behind most of the games in the franchise up to the mid-2000s, and that was their main focus for the longest time. Sadly, the studio went defunct in 2010, but there is a road in Derby called Lara Croft Way after their efforts, and it's fitting. An iconic British studio has their iconic British character immortalized in this road. And that's all I got for you this time. Thanks for watching.